they're coming through the back door. Get the children. Hide the children. My bad, dude. Usually I do my vocal warmers before we start recording. But that was a great segue to another great Off the Top podcast episode. Julian, how are your vocals doing?
They are warmed up. Not to that extent, but they are warmed up, and I'm excited for our take on a true crime podcast. I don't know if you guys listen to true crime podcasts. We figured we'd jump in, talk a little murder mystery here, unsolved murder mysteries. Maybe you know them, maybe you don't, but we found them pretty interesting as we dug deep into these mysteries.
Absolutely. We know that, you guys love a murder mystery. And so we wanted to milk that podcast cash cow a little bit and see how we do. And so we picked out a couple of our favorite and most interesting murder mysteries or unsolved murders. And so we're going to just tell the story, get our take, and then go from there. So the first one I want to talk about is one that's going to be near and dear to Julian's heart. Basically, it's a jazz-loving axe murderer.
Yeah, this is the one I saw in our show notes beforehand, and I distinctly said out loud to myself, jazz, that's interesting. Don't read the rest of it, Julian, because I really want to hear Jordan tell the story.
Exactly. So I'm taking you back to New Orleans in 1918 and 1919. So basically, there was this axe murderer and chopping up parties. And so he literally, with his axe, go to town on a party of people. And so he did 8 in total. And usually he took the axes from people's home. At least that's what they think, because they never caught this person. And they suggested they couldn't even figure out a motive of why he was doing that. And they were all kind of terrified and scared. And then this person sent a taunting letter to the actual local papers. And this is exactly as it read. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time, in parentheses, on next Tuesday night, I'm going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I'm going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I'm very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well then, so much the better for you, people. One thing is certain, that is that some of your people who do not jazz it on Tuesday night will get the axe.
That is one of the most interesting serial killer murder mystery notes I think I've ever heard, that he will stop his terrorizing for his simple love of jazz. I don't know what that says about jazz, but the idea that to get the entire city of New Orleans, notably known for jazz, to play jazz to be safe is a very, very unique persona or person to have that as your, I won't do anything bad if this is happening.
Yeah, exactly. And first off, I'm not illiterate. It was hard to read. Secondly, dude, what if this dude, let's think of the angles. What if this dude not only loved jazz, but he owned a jazz music company, and and he was just being a businessman?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great marketing strategy. I don't know if it's executed I don't know if it's executed the right way. The one thing that made me think about it is the fact that he put 12:15 earthly time. I know, this time frame, 1918, 1919, is a little bit more interesting, but that is equally interesting to me, because, the whole alien thing at that time wasn't as big as it was as we get into the 60s and 70s, and Roswell, New Mexico, and Area 51 start piping up. So I would be very curious to why, that was added for this particular person.
Yeah, exactly. It's not really known. I mean, I guess that's one of those things, that's why it's a murder mystery is, why specifically then? Like, does this have to do with aliens? He talks about devils in the nether regions. So there's a lot of mystery I think it's equally as terrifying that this guy or this person, because we don't know who it is, wants to hear people playing jazz music out of the fear of their lives.
Yeah, it's well, the thing that taking access from someone's home, neutral standpoint, probably intelligent. You aren't tracked to it if you leave it at the scene; it's already there. But that is like a very brutal onslaught. And once again, 1918, 1919, very, very different times in terms of home security and, what people are expecting. This is well before people figure out what serial killers are and their motives beforehand, or even communicating between city lines to their police departments about what's happening to connect these occurrences. So just overall a unique once again, enigmatic character that this person is creating for his very dark needs, so to speak, during that time.
Yeah, kind of a puzzling one. I'll tell you what, if I was like, living at that time, I would absolutely for sure have a jazz band playing or be in the vicinity of one. Because just in itself, kind of being such a wild claim, I think that it is scary enough to take it seriously. Like, there's no way that that's a joke.
With that being said, I'm always rocking jazz at home, so my house would be pretty cool. But once again, very, very groovy, but dark person at that time, and obviously was never caught or can never figure it out even if it was more than one person for them to come together and decide that jazz was the stopping point is very unique.
Absolutely. But without further ado, let's get to the next one. What do you got, Julian?
So this is the story of Elisa Lam. Just learned about this one recently. And essentially, Elisa Lam was found dead in a water tank at the notorious Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles in 2013. To this day, nobody knows how she died or how her body got there. But there was footage moments before she died of her in an elevator. And the police released the surveillance footage taken from the cameras at the Cecil Hotel on their website. And this is where things kind of look to turn into a truly bizarre, very odd scene. And so Elisa Lam was a tourist coming into California. And on February 19th, 2 weeks after the video was published by the authorities, maintenance worker Santiago Lopez found Elisa Lamb's body floating in one of the hotel water tanks. Lopez made that discovery that day after responding to the complaints from hotel patrons about low water pressure and weird taste coming from the water. And so the hotel video shows Elisa in one of the elevators on the date of her disappearance because her parents didn't want her to travel alone to the U.S. So after her supposed checkout date, they tried to reach her and couldn't reach her. And that's when the police, looked further into it. But you can actually watch this video on the internet. It's not like dark. It's just really eerie. Essentially, she goes into this elevator and is acting super strangely. It's like frantically hitting the button, like peeking out the elevator, hiding in the corners in this very pixelated images. And then you can see, her eventually stepping in and out of the elevator, poking around. And then she peers out of the elevator a few times before like leaving entirely. And that's the last footage they have. There's a lot of interesting theories about the footage being doctored, why there isn't other footage in other areas, but no one's sure how she ended up in the water tank on the roof. That is pretty difficult to get into for, the frame of this lady. to get in there and eventually end up, as the coroner said, drowned, because that was the only, thing they could get to at the time, to figure out what had happened. So it's one of the most bizarre mysteries there is. And if you see the footage, if you are, a courageous person, and watch it, as a very eerie video, that you would think you'd see in like a big production scary movie.
That's incredible that they have this video footage and that's all they have. Like you said, kind of the odd circumstances of seeing this person obviously in a panic and in this video, and then she leaves and there's nothing else. That's all that they have.
Yeah, and then for the police to release the footage, and then, the hotel. Once again, this is a hotel, so there's bound to be people, somewhere in the hall to have seen her potentially, or if no one saw her, equally odd. But 2 weeks later, after this, it comes out is that when they find her in a water tank on the roof, that is causing obviously really weird tasting water and low water pressure because of, what's happening to the body over that time. Just a really, really bizarre mystery. And the reason I felt, compelled to bring this one in here is because there is truly all the Reddit theories I've seen and all the different, it goes everything from paranormal activity to, doctored footage to someone catching her in the hallway. No one has any idea of how it happened, and to get to that next employee only roof access to get in the water tank. No one knows. Unsolved murder mystery.
And Bob's your uncle. I guess that's one of those that, we'll stay wondering about. If you have a hot lead or have a theory, reach out to us. We're curious. And with that water, the same water that they're giving to people in the Dominican Republic, who knows?
Yeah. And with that transition, Jordan's got a gem coming up for you.
Absolutely. So basically, we're going to take it back to the 1966 in a place that I've been to personally, and a place that I was very fond of, Adelaide, Australia, on Australia Day itself, which is obviously kind of like their 4th of July, so to speak. And we have basically the disappearance of the Beaumont children. So of the children, we have Jane Beaumont. Her siblings are 7-year-old, and Jane's 9. Her 7-year-old sister, Arna, and her 4-year-old brother, Grant. And they basically all vanished out of nowhere. So what happened was the kids hopped on the bus for basically what should have been a 5-minute train ride to Glengull Beach, a popular spot to visit. And hours after, they just never returned home. And so this basically set into motion this mysterious, like, searching for these kids and this unsolved mystery sensation. And the really, really weird thing is that there was multiple witnesses that saw the children places. So, for instance, there was a witness that claimed to have seen the siblings on the beach, and they were playing with a tall, thin, blonde man. And then there was other, like, things where Jane was spotted buying snacks, including a meat pie, apparently, which the children have never purchased before, with money that she never was supposed to have, or she didn't have when she was leaving that home that day. And then there's also another witness that basically saw a mail carrier who knew the family, who knew the girls, saw the kids walking in the direction of the home a few hours later, but apparently never made it. So I think that this one is especially eerie. First off, that it's children. Secondly, that there is multiple reports of people witnessing these kids out and about and doing kind of very, very suspicious things, as far as like playing with the man or, having money, which they were not supposed to, like, that they didn't have beforehand, or even the ones where they're on their way home but never made it. That's quite eerie to me.
Yeah, and you can see how the 60s were just a wild time. It makes me very thankful for technology in media today, where it's a little bit easier to get out that image of the children if you're looking for them. But it's always unsettling when the description of the person they're seen with is like tall, thin, blonde man. Very, very vague. I haven't been to Australia. I'd like to go one day, but I picture a lot of tall, thin, blonde men in Australia. So, that doesn't help anyone, I think, at the end of the day to figure this out. And to have, as Jordan said, witnesses see them purchasing things or familiar faces and just have no clue where they ended up is, I think one of the biggest fears in society is, the kids probably did what they normally do, and some variable happened that day, and no one will have any idea of what truly happened.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the connecting link to all of these stories, is that the air of mystery on, why, not knowing why things happen, not knowing how they happened, and not knowing basically essentially how to not allow that to happen to anybody else. And I think that's the thing about murder mysteries, is that people want to know because they don't want to be in situations like that. So they want to know, like, okay, so this is something I need to watch out for. Scary person in a dark alley, or, X, Y, or Z. But the thing is that, things happen, and there's, in these cases, unknown reasons, which means that, you just don't know. So it's just unknownness that is the scariest part to me. I mean, granted, the missing people, the murdered people, yeah, that's terrifying. But the fact that we have no idea why is also equally as scary, I would say.
Yeah, and there's never really any closure for, some of the families involved or the people in their life involved, where in this case, you can make an assumption that the road, did not end up well for these children, but you could also make the assumption that maybe there's something is still going around. It's really tough to tell. And that's, what makes it so eerie, is that one morning, you could see someone in that fleeting moment, someone could be gone in the next 8 hours, is never something that sits well with anyone. And to then hear the accounts of seeing your children on the beach with an unknown person, or purchasing something with unknown money, or even walking home, doesn't make things any easier, and it just raises more and more questions. And I could assume only drives, the mind to wander and do, detrimental things during that thought process.
Yeah, absolutely. But without further ado, Julian, what is your next story?
The final story I have here is about the Springfield Three, 1992. So a little after, when serial killers are found out, a little bit more communication technology comes into play. But essentially, Suzanne and Stacy Streeter and McCall just graduate from high school. They go to a party till about 2. They go home to Suzanne's home. And then Stacy, Suzanne, and her mom, Cheryl, were never seen again. The disappearance of one person might be intentional. Maybe they just wanted to begin a new life. The disappearance of 2 teenage girls and a girl's mother is obviously something else altogether. And the most interesting thing about this is when their friends go to see them in the morning, the house is perfectly fine. Everything, there's nothing stolen. Purses are still there. Everything is in normal order as it always is, except for this case, the dog is locked in the bathroom. The last anyone heard from, the mother was a phone call at 11 on that night. And, likely she was asleep before the girls came back. And it was obvious after that someone had to get out of bed for those girls to vanish later around 2 a.m. And so I did a little bit more digging. There's a lot of different theories about how do you, at this time, take 3 people from their home, especially, older women. I wouldn't say older, but, out of high school over 18 or 18 and their mother. They aren't, kids at this point. That the biggest theory I saw was for the cops or a fake cop in this scenario, where a lot of the different research that's been shown, that there's multiple podcasts on it. I think it was on the First 48 or a cold case or something like that, where they thought there's people who knew what was going on, but didn't know what was going on in terms of bigger picture type things. But this Reddit theory breaks down, eventually surmises to, how do you get someone to open the door at 2 a.m. that you don't know? How do you persuade them to leave their house? How do you transport them without anyone else seeing? And a few other things. And this theory is that either, a cop or someone posing as a cop shows up to them, reports to them and tells them, hey, get in my car, we're taking you to the station. And then lo and behold, that's not the truth. But no one knows truly what happened. Even the brother, who was accused for a long time and is trying to pull together information, hasn't found any new findings.
I think that one's particularly odd and different because it's multiple adults. We talked about like children or one person in like these scenarios, or like an abduction and stuff like that. But multiple adults is the odd one, I think. And especially since, like, yeah, those questions are quite prevalent to, like, your thought process of understanding everything. But I do believe that, since the dog was locked into the bathroom, that there was no persuasion of like, hey, leave, like I couldn't imagine. But at the same time, it didn't seem like there was any, like, anything was messed up or anything of that nature.
Yeah, it just become one of those odd ones, like when we compare to the jazz musician or jazz guy, who left the carnage at the scene. You look at something that might have been bizarre in an elevator. You look at kids disappearing on the street. This one is people being taken from their own home, and everything left in order with nothing stolen and no carnage at the scene, and no one seeing them or hearing from them, late in the night. Once again, to being adults, how it happened or what actually happened may never be known. But once again, it is one of those mysteries that people are always looking for the answers. And maybe hopefully one day someone puts the pieces together, or someone comes out and says something, and it offers closure for, one of these families.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously I couldn't imagine putting myself in these shoes, but yeah, regardless of it's kids going to the beach, people at parties, somebody traveling, or, just people in their own homes, anything can happen anywhere. And not to, like, make it feel like you scare anybody or anything like that, but that is just the case. So yeah, I don't want to hear anybody becoming an unsolved mystery. I hope you guys really enjoyed this podcast. And if you want to hear more about this, you want us to do this a little bit more often, dabble into this, just let us know. Obviously through our social, which is the off top cast, I believe. Yep. And that's going to be on Twitter, IG. We have the Off the Top podcast as our Gmail. And obviously you can reach us through Anchor, but I hope you guys enjoyed.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. We love your feedback. We love your reviews. We read them pretty frequently, and we're glad that you guys, have something to listen at work or while working out or commuting. We really look forward to more episodes in the future, and, just having fun and learning with you guys. And until next time.